Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Uncanny X-Men, the DRACO. Stuck in an alternate dimension, the team have found Nightcrawler, but are taken prisoner by Azazel, leader of a massive interdimensional army claiming to be the basis for Satan, and the father of, among others, Kurt Wagner. There were other mutant shenanigans going on, but I covered those last week, since we're focusing on the fuzzy dude right now. Issue 433's cover simply has Nightcrawler standing in front of some lightning, posed as if he's modeling for a fashion catalog for some reason. And, oddly enough, he seems to resemble the late Harry Anderson. Was artist Philip Tan a fan of Night Court? Anyway, Havoc, Husk, Jubilee, Carter, and Futurama cameo Iceman's Head are in a dungeon, complete with lots of skulls and broken skeletons. It's apparently magically enchanted with an immunity to their mutant powers, so they can't just bust their way out. Carter, telepathically relaying Bobby's thoughts, says he's upset at Alex for stealing both Lorna and Annie away from him. Yeah, before the summer's Dane wedding got cancelled, Drake had a one-night stand with the human nurse. Didn't seem like it was supposed to be that serious, but I guess he's just petty and needy. Summers calls Ice Skull out for blaming others for his problems, and once he finds enough water to freeze into a new body, they can talk more formally. And this is where we get those infamous panels where Havoc says he drank a lot of water earlier and may be able to produce enough liquid to make Drake a new body. Are you insane? Urine is a summer color and Bobby is clearly a winter! Back in the dining hall, Angel is infuriated at the innocent Professor Dibble's murder. Did you also kill that other archaeologist who found Carter? No, actually, the story just kind of forgot about him. Azazel claims he held dominion over all the Earth until Warren's kind arrived, and mentions how either Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov said that any science sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic.
Hail science!
Nightcrawler being hit on by Jillian, who finds him attractive, though given how similar they look, she could just be a raging narcissist. Makes a joke about the Scarlet Witch, and I don't know, this exchange seems a little confused. I'm not even convinced that was an actual joke, and I'm not sure if he's talking to Azzy or is briefly entranced by Jillian and speaking without thinking, because he mentions Wanda being on his mind lately. Then he gets irate, how their host seems to be contradicting himself, claiming to be Satan, but perhaps now saying he's not. Then it dawns on him. This villain is a mutant from biblical times. And then...
He starts monologuing.
Yeah, Bor-Elzebub here starts waxing on about how evolution, and mutation by extension, is as necessary as life itself, occurring when nature requires something new after some dangerous and rapid change presents itself, often by human civilization, which has become a blight on his planet, with its steel and concrete. Turns out his millennia-long plan was really about his hatred for big box stores. Look out, Sam's Club. In short, yeah, he's just as Kurt described him, having been kicked out by angels that were really just another group of mutants, the Sheriffim mentioned a couple issues ago, all because he imposed his rule on mankind, challenging God, and was dropped in this desolate dimension. So, angels were mutants, as he was Satan who enslaved and killed humans because he thought they were poisoning his planet, and God is used in quotation marks. This feels an awful lot like Austin writing atheist fanfiction. Very self-indulgent fanfiction. It's all in the historical record, whatever he's talking about, and would just need proper interpretation, and might also include the means of getting back to Earth, which is why he wanted that archaeologist alive. He's interested in what Warren knows of his own lineage, but he ain't talking, so he decides to let Yggdrasil, the guy who accused him of being a Sheriffim earlier, torture and kill him to his heart's content, if he's not going to be useful. He's taken away, telling Kurt to look after Paige, because remember, she and Angel were a thing around this time, while the elf and Logan are restrained. And despite previous drama from his hand burning from the rich boy's blood, it seems just fine now. Guess they must have forgotten about that. Unlike what's about to happen to Logan, he's pinned down by a spear, and Azzy, conveniently guessing he has both metal bones and healing, orders his arms removed at the shoulder joint, then cauterized so they can't grow back. Right, because Woolry's never healed from intense heat before. No one tell Azazel. We want him to be surprised. Joking aside, if they have some kind of magic or other ability to make a mutant power-resistant prison cell, they might have a similarly capable tool to counteract the Knucklehead's renowned regeneration. He tells his minion to make this torment last, in case they can't create another portal for another couple of decades, after Azazel sires more children. How can he do that if he's supposedly stuck here? And how did he do it before? They have not yet explained that. Later, we go to a portal platform of some kind. I assume as much because of all the wispy images of Earth locales, where Azazel tries getting answers from Kiwi Black, even trying to appeal to his Maori heritage, but he's staying mute. So he's taken away to be tortured to death as well, also in part because he failed as Guardian of the Portal. That leaves Azzy's 2 remaining blue sons, wondering if they can provide a means of escape, since this is where Kurt travels through when he teleports, and where Abyss shunts things into with his portals. If that's true, why did Mystique and all that stuff shoot out from his body only after he arrived there? Seems like, by the comics' logic, they all should have been here before the X-Men. And most importantly, what happened to that neighbor's puppy? The dime store devil says he's used their genetic connection to control his offspring. That KB was meant to be a defender of the portal that was opened, though he fought the manipulation, allowing the X-Men to destroy his only gateway out. Hey, you hire family, you takes your chances. The sulfur-like odor in the air, the scent that lingers when Wagner teleports, would seem to confirm this claim. Their thoughts can manipulate the energies of this particular spot they're at, peeking in on various locations and subplots because it's a unique juncture in space-time. So expect a Federation starship to stumble in any minute now. Fingers crossed for Picard's Enterprise, but I wouldn't say no to Benjamin Sisko captaining the Defiant. Or 7 of 9's Enterprise, for that matter.
A cruel joke of the angels to put me here.
In fairness, you did start it by toilet papering their place and egging their car. He asks Kurt if he shares the desire to go back to Earth, not remain in this desolate place forever, nor wait years for a new generation of Azzy spawn to try creating a new portal, even if it would mean handing the planet over to the villain. The elf admits he wants to be home, but feels like his body is saying he's already there. The problem is that a working portal needs to be opened from both sides of each dimension, something achieved on accident by Azzy and Kurt's stepmom Margali. She at first thought she summoned a demon, but the two soon became allies and eventually much more, because of course they did.
What's so unappealing about hearing your elderly father talk about sex?
The only person with the power to make a portal on only one side was the angel who banished Azazel and his forces millennia ago, and without any clues from the archaeologist, and none of the surviving teleporters having enough juice to make it happen, they seem very much stuck. Funny thing, though, Xavier, Lorna, and Annie traveled to Isla des Demones, where Polaris detected broken magnetic lines, a result of the rip in spatial fabric. Using her powers, she manages to create an opening, very noticeably right through Abyss's torso.
Nah, personal space violated. Must immediately post indignation on social media.
Which brings us to the finale, issue 434, with a cover featuring Wolverine ignoring the inferno behind him so he can check to see if he polished his claws shiny enough. New art team this issue with Takashi Miyazawa, Craig Young, Scott Elmer, and Avalon Studios. Despite the previous issue ending on Azazel noticing the window in Abyss and the kid yelling in horror, this issue begins with Mr. Steiger having a much more subdued, though perplexed reaction, and Mystique having to point it out to her one-night stand. The wannabe monarch lunges at the opportunity, only for Nightcrawler to teleport him and his little bro away, leaving Azzy with a realization. Kurt knew that the telepathic Guinea was not present, allowing him to lie unrestrained. Did Kurt lie, though? Maybe technically about feeling he belonged in this dimension, but as far as whether or not he or Abyss could muster the power to get back to Earth, he just responded to Azazel with a question, asking what made him think they even had that power in the first place, and let him draw his own conclusion. Even calling it a lie of omission feels like a stretch, but either way he can just say a rosary or two, provided his religiosity wasn't changed that much since Holy War. They find Guinea unconscious, just coming around in the halls of the castle, knocked out by Kiwi Black, whose mind was shielded from her thanks to an additional power they hadn't anticipated him having.
How convenient.
While her boss goes to find his Azure sons, she knows how to handle the rest of their captives, have them all killed. Meanwhile, Angel is chained and being tormented by Yggdrasil, who, despite still having a scar on his chest and the eye patch, suddenly has blue anime hair. So yeah, that's kinda different. He mentions that in the thousands of years being trapped in this dimension, Azazel's people have each developed multiple powers. Would you believe we use those mail-away ads in the back of old comic books? Turns out they were totally legit. He, for example, also has a small amount of telepathy and can see an image of Paige Guthrie in Warren's mind, and since she seems so meaningful to him, he promises to torture her as well. And that's when Kiwi Black appears from behind, later mentioned having decapitated Azazel off-panel. In the dungeon, Carter relays that Iceman is ready to take on some water from the others' bodies. Any water. And Alex apologizes for the implications last issue, him and Paige offering to help Bobby restore himself. And Jubilee, too, eventually. I know comics are done many weeks before they hit the shelves, but this scene feels very different from the previous issue, making me wonder if perhaps backlash over the threat of Drake's urine-based restoration had Marvel quickly trying to backtrack. Just a guess on my part, I could totally be wrong. I mean, they're smiling, looking pretty laid back, until Gineas shows up to execute them. Fortunately, since they aren't trying to break out, they can still at least use their powers in a fight inside the cell. Though, Guinea being blind, Jubilee's powers aren't that effective. I thought those paths also came with burning effects, but moving on. So Paige turns to Steel, punching her arm off. Yet on top of her psionics, Guinea can rapidly regenerate, and possesses enhanced strength, demonstrated as she grabs both Husk and Carter by their faces, squeezing to the point of beginning to crack Guthrie's steel exterior, and even punching her head clean off doesn't even faze her. "Alex, she's hurting my head!"
Yeah, well, you wanted to be on an X-Men mission, bud. Sometimes on a mission, someone tries to cave your skull in. Now, what did we learn about stowing away? When her noggin fully recovers, and she grows a third arm from her neck, because why not at this point, Guinea pauses. At first I thought she was briefly dazed by seeing light for the first time in hundreds of years, since her new eyes aren't sewn shut. Well, that would have been a clever development. Instead, she shrivels up and falls over, presumably dying as Iceman pulled away her body's moisture to restore his body. I mean, maybe she survived, but it does feel like one of those X-Men don't kill except very occasionally and casually and horrifically and never bring it up again kinda moments. Elsewhere, Kurt and Nils are making their way through the castle, the latter getting really chatty about knowing the elf was lying, maybe because of some brotherly connection. So he also lied about not being able to use his powers too, which I don't remember because he didn't really say anything there, and getting that joke about Scarlet Witch earlier, until Crawler tells him to keep the noise down while they traipse through enemy territory.
Quiet, Pinky. Both because we have to be stealthy and because you're an idiot.
That's when Polaris pops her head through Abyss's stomach, which she refers to as a lame power. She did promise not to try hurting anyone, but I guess she wasn't counting verbal abuse. Between hearing that the team is scattered and that the bigger Nils's dimensional rip gets, the more it starts drawing everything in, Lorna gets an idea. Cargo shorts, but for gerbils. No, it's using her powers to make the torso portal bigger, bringing the structure down from the inside. But since this is the dimension where the stuff goes when he draws it in, does it make sense that it would be pulled to Earth like this, when that's not how it worked when they arrived? Or is the lime ginger reversing magnetic polarities or something? Whatever. She figures Abyss is tough enough to be okay, and while Charles says on the next page Nils is terrified, Lorna says he'll get over it. What was the point of getting to the source of her trauma if she's still going to be a dismissive and scurrilous jackwagon to everyone? The chaos breaks one of Logan's arms free of his restraints, allowing him to pop some claws into his torturer's head. Havoc and the gang are taking an ice slide to the portal, their now ambulatory human icicle detecting the moisture from terra firma.
"Look, everyone, it's Bobby Drake, Iceman!"
What an odd thing to say.
As Kurt bamfs away, Carter is reunited with his mom.
"Mom, it was so cool! You should have seen it! I psychically talked with a disembodied head, some bondage lady tried crushing my skull while her limbs were taken off, and I saw her drained of all her water until she was desiccated chaff, motionless on the cold stone floor. But I'm sure I'm processing it well."
For saving her son, Annie plants one on Bobby in gratitude, even if it ends up giving her tongue freezer burn, while Havoc looks on, understandably forlorn. As to where Kurt poured it off to, he located Azazel on the roof, which makes it weird that the villain didn't try teleporting to look for his sons, or to the portal, so I guess he really is just dumb. But hey, then we wouldn't get this needless fight scene, where dual sword-wielding Azzy Daddy says there was always something special about Kurt, that he can't escape his dad through the rift, and offers him a chance to rule at his side if he just brings Abyss back so they can conquer the Earth. Snagging one of the swords, our blue-furred boy turns him down, of course, so Red Menace threatens to find Nils anyway and bury Wagner for betraying his father.
You are not my father. You are just a Lothario with regrets. Hey, I didn't get to writing my novel because I've been busy, that's all. The publishers would have loved my story about a demon man finding love in a southern Colorado pastry shop. Shut up. It's not stupid. You're stupid.
Nightcrawler is saddened that he shares DNA with someone without love or compassion, and as he prepares to strike him down for harboring the foolish notions of angels, that's when the stone beneath him gives way, and the sort of devil laughs as he's pulled into some other dimensional tear that just happens to be there. Okay. Warren and Kiwi Black are nearby, calling out to Kurt, who starts crying? Why? If there was some sign that Azazel could have been convinced to give up his evil ways, it'd make more sense, or some genuine decency. If instead Crawler looked more somber and disappointed, that would have made more sense. This weepy eye stuff? Not so much. The three make it out of the portal, along with Wolvie and Mystique, and we go to the Xavier Institute sometime later. Kurt got to know his half-brothers, Abyss and Kiwi Black, and presently chats with Xavier about how confusing and complicated discovering his parentage became. Though the father he wondered about is now lost to him, Wagner says that the supposed devil only provided the genetics that gave the elf his appearance. But as for someone providing support, food, family, love, kindness, and understanding, the comic ends on him thanking Charles for being a true father to him all these years. And hey, red shirt with a star on it. Kurt's a fan of Steven Universe.
That sounds so adult.
Too bad that's not enough to save this story, because in the end I found the DRACO to be unpleasant and unnecessary. In Catholicism, the fifth glorious mystery depicts a woman giving birth while a seven-headed dragon or serpent, called the devil or Satan, tries to consume her child. The kid is taken up to his throne in heaven, the dragon and some angels he's coerced start a big ol' fight, lose their place in paradise, the dragon tries to drown the birth mother in a raging river it spews from his mouth, but that doesn't work, so it decides to go wage war on those who follow Jesus. Yeah, I know, sorry for leaving some stuff out, but I'm trying to be succinct. While the description, I think, is meant as a kind of vision someone has, the core meaning is about the Virgin Mary's assumption into heaven and coronation as Queen of Heaven and Earth. So you really want to watch when and where you say, "Slay, Queen." I bring this up because it may have been a notable influence on this story. The name DRACO means dragon, or serpent more specifically. Azazel claims to be Satan, i.e. inspired the stories thereof. He and his minions were cast out of their paradise empire by mutant angels, and at least one of his goons even has feathery wings like Warren's, which may reference how the devil pulled some angels to his side. It's all trying to create an in-universe, non-religious explanation to some biblical stories that got changed as time went on, taking out the more supernatural elements, almost like he was trying to recontextualize Nightcrawler's Catholic faith. All it needed was for the X-Men to be saved by Richard Dawkins and Brian Griffin from Family Guy to actually be atheist fanfiction. Though even there it seems to contradict itself, because you have Azzy talking about advanced technology being akin to magic, and the X-Men locked in a cell that somehow keeps them from escaping. But if it is tech, how'd they develop it in this barren wasteland? And why does everything appear as if it's from the Middle Ages? Then you have to remember that in the Marvel Universe, all religions are basically established as fact, the supernatural and magic are real, so what's the point of having some dude having inspired the stories of Satan? Heck, though I don't know that he was ever named before this arc, Baron Wagner's name was Christian, and we find out that he, Christian Wagner, isn't Kurt's biological father. Now this could just be coincidental, since Crawler's faith wasn't mentioned and he doesn't discuss scripture or anything, and after Holy War maybe that's for the best. But that's not my problem with the story. My problem is that it needlessly complicates Crawler's origins as part of some master plan that isn't much of one, much like the Pope of Humanities. Wagner's no longer just some demonic-looking mutant that happened to find comfort in God in a kind of hilarious irony, who struggled against bigotry and found himself at odds with his own mother. No, now he's one of a whole mess of kids sired by a fake devil who wants to conquer the world because he feels he deserves to. He was the linchpin in this grand scheme to retake the planet because humans are bad and dumb. Azazel and his crew are evil, but they don't lie, and science, 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 and blah. It's the same problem I had with the new 52 versions of Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain. They had origins that were tied to big hyperbolic events, whereas the originals started out in considerably more subdued manners. Mystique is a terrorist, sure, but her goals aren't about conquest, rather liberation and freedom. Not that it justifies her methods. I think that alone was enough. But this whole Azazel shtick feels like it's trying too hard to make the elf's lineage someone's idea of more interesting or more epic or something, trying to add more layers and drama that honestly didn't need to be there.
It's so complex and cool.
Just because an idea is overly convoluted and complex doesn't make it cool.
Kurt already looked like a conventional demon, and that could have stayed a happenstance of his mutation. He didn't need to be teleported to safety by Azzy when he was a baby. It could have just been left up to a miracle that he survived the fall. In the end, none of this seemed to add anything to Wagner's story. Just a new antagonist that may appear from time to time, and him getting misty-eyed when Demon Daddy disappeared wasn't remotely earned. Frankly, someone that could credibly claim inspiration for some biblical stories could, in the right hands, be an interesting tale that challenges Crawler's beliefs, without a biological connection. While I haven't read the story itself, I am aware that recently Marvel established Mystique as using her powers to mimic or copy or use whatever Azazel's genetic material to impregnate her longtime lover Destiny, then apparently had Xavier mind-wipe them to forget almost all of this as part of a plan to keep Azzy from conquering the world. Without knowing more than that, not saying it's good or bad, only that I don't personally care for it because it just makes Kurt's origins more needlessly complicated, which was my problem with this arc in the first place. I wonder if I hired an exorcist and they could remove Azazel from these comics altogether, thus retconning both retcons away. And as for keeping Azzy from conquering the world, considering how a handful of X-Men ended up taking out these demon chumps, even if with some difficulty, I can't see them being victorious when dealing with tacticians like Cyclops or Captain America, geniuses like Reed Richards and Tony Stark, or powerhouses like the Hulk. Really, what makes Azazel stand out from any other Regal villain other than happening to sire an X-Man? Frankly, he doesn't come off all that interesting for a story largely focused on his exploits. And there seems to be something of a plot hole where he can travel to Earth to impregnate women, but needs a bunch of teleporting mutants to help him get out of the dimension? I don't recall any explanation of some stipulation like he'd be forcibly pulled back in after a while. The portal made sense to get his people through all at once, but if he could leave, why not use the same method to get the others out one or two at a time? None of this is very well explained. The other subplots also had fathers as a kind of connective thread. Polaris finding out she's the daughter of Magneto, a retcon I can't say I ever really cared for either, then watching Genosha get devastated while she ran for it. Not sure if this tracks for anyone more familiar with the character than me, since I'd imagine she'd faced terrifying scenarios before, but without a team like X-Factor or the X-Men or something to back her up, one could argue the situation may have been uniquely harrowing. It makes sense this would instill some serious trauma, but the revelation doesn't seem to change her at all. She's still catty around Annie, insulting to complete strangers, and still disregards others' safety when she conceives of a potentially dangerous idea that may cause more harm. I guess it doesn't count as trying to hurt others if it's accidental, huh? Was it part of Chuck Austin's mission statement to make her as unlikable as possible? Did he see passive-aggressive psychopath as an improvement on her personality? I don't know, maybe she improved later. Juggernaut's story was actually much stronger out of the three, and felt more genuine. The sting of his own abuse still sticks with him, and seeing Sammy suffer the same kind of treatment easily sets him off. For a guy that's been so cold to his own stepbrother, and pretty vicious with the X-Men, it shows he does have a soft spot for people going through what he did. This was a kid who was not quite strong enough to defend himself yet, but helped him in a time of crisis, and unlike most, wanted to be around Kane. Someone clearly inspired enough by him to fight back against his bullies, though that may not be too great since Sam seemed to also mimic Marco's merciless attitude. All the Brute wanted was to make sure his friend was okay, restraining order be damned. But then it led to a fight with superheroes, who, let's be honest, are just as responsible for the Pare home getting wrecked, and Sam's mom getting hurt. Sasquatch looked all too eager to unleash his own savagery on Jugsy, but not concerned about taking the fight away from civilians. Maybe that's just how he is, or not, I don't know. Yet it was Sammy's look of fear, the plea to stop hurting his family, that managed to do what few others ever have: stop the unstoppable Juggernaut. While this part of the arc was better in a lot of ways, it could have been collected on its own, into a single issue, and been part of, or at least a precursor to, the Trial of Juggernaut story that came after. As it is, it just makes the DRACO feel more congested than it needs to be. Maybe then, Part 6 wouldn't feel so rushed and totally different from the previous issues. Brief panels of characters managing to narrowly escape, conveniences thrown in via exposition to move things along and explain away certain details. Azazel's crew developed multiple powers each, so I guess that's how he disguised himself as a human in the prologue. Kiwi Black can shield his mind, so he can be a plot device to help the X-Men. Oh, and that whole making yellow ice bit? Yeah, just forget that. Havoc is totally sorry, everyone's cool now, especially Bobby, 'cause, new body. Seriously, was that threat just to be edgy? As it is, it's weird that Drake, his body shattered, trapped in an alternate dimension, complains about his love life, and Alex thinks it's much better to suggest something that gross. Dear Chuck Austin.
Now go sit in the corner and think about your life.
Maybe it was always meant as a joke, and the more serious-looking art style of the first several issues made it seem more like an actual possibility. Though off-panel, one would hope. Otherwise, it feels like a really questionable way to build tension. No real explanation as to how these demons survived for thousands of years, but maybe that dimension just slows down or stops aging, like the Phantom Zone or something. Also, for someone so ticked off at having her heart broken by Azazel, Mystique seemed unusually buddy-buddy with him throughout. And yeah, it's weird that Azzy didn't teleport around his castle to find Kurt, or use that genetic connection to try controlling him again. Maybe the change in vibe is in part due to the art being very different in the final chapter. Less use of inks on details, designs being more streamlined and cartoony in some cases, some characters like Idrisil and even Sammy looking completely different, and giving Kurt pupils. The artwork throughout the story was just fine, though the uses of ink lines in parts 1 through 5 kinda made it feel a bit too gritty, and maybe some excessive detailing like with the X-Plane and the underground portion of the X-Men's base. On the one hand, it's impressive that they put in that level of detail. On the other, it looks like this sophisticated superhero aircraft has a lot of exposed wires and tubing, just to make it look really, really mechanical. It's gotta make the oil change a real pain in the neck. Maybe all those darks didn't always help, like making Carter look like a demented garbage pail kid.
What was the thought process?
Nightmares.
The covers were okay in that there's nothing technically wrong with them that I could see. They're fine in a poster you can hang on your wall kind of way, and they don't spoil a story. But without something eye-grabbing beyond a close-up of a character doing something to make it stand out as part of this particular arc, it feels like they could be used for any issue about anything. Maybe that was the point. Maybe someone thought it was efficient that way. I don't know. I did think it was odd how some panels or specific characters would deviate to something that looked more like a digital painting. It made them stand out from the others in a given scene, but aside from that, I'm not sure what they were going for. Alpha Flight's armor just looked silly to me. It's passively mentioned it's some kind of Hulkbuster gear, for all the good it did, but even if that's the case, that they put this on simply because they'd be dealing with the Juggernaut, it all looks so impractical, covering the upper body but not much else below. Did Canada not know that Iron Man's Hulkbuster armor is basically a mini Gundam, or did Alpha Flight suffer budget cuts? Maybe that's really why North Star's with the X-Men. He got fired from his other superhero job. While it wasn't quite the Nightcrawler is the son of the devil story I'd heard about, it feels rightfully infamous. Some things appeared very disjointed, confused, and the whole premise didn't feel worth replacing what already worked. I get wanting to build on what's established, add new elements, but personally, I think the simplest origin for Kurt Wagner was the best one. This is a case where the devil really should not have been in the details. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.